Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. This is the evening live stream. We have live streams 3 times a day on this channel. The morning, afternoon, and evening, late evening live stream on H.A. Goodman and B on my other channel, H.A. Goodman's other channel, aptly named. For the upload right after this, hit subscribe to my super chat. Thank you. House.gov. Chairman Comer announces hearings on rampant fraud in Minnesota. CBS News. Fox, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota GOP on fraud under WALZ. Taxpayers are tired of being ripped off. It's $8 billion. That's one estimate, $8 to $9 billion. And Tim Walz and others have to testify before Congress. The FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and others are looking at potentially $8 billion in fraud. They already found $1 billion and counting, in addition to about 90 people charged and indicted. But those 90 people very likely are low-level potential criminals. The people at the top, the governor, the congresswoman, potentially Congresswoman Omar, potentially Governor Walz. It's almost certain that they either were completely inept or complicit in felonies, committing felonies, and widespread criminal activity in terms of fraud. There's no way that billions upon billions of dollars gets funneled from federal funds, from taxpayer dollars, to Minnesota, and the governor doesn't know that there's rampant fraud. If he was going after whistleblowers, for example, he's complicit. He committed a crime if indeed he went after people trying to call out the fraud and the waste and the abuse of money. Anyway, hit subscribe. Check this out. There are 200 new tips and complaints that President Trump just found out from the Department of Homeland Security.
Is the Assistant Secretary for Family Support at the Health and Human Services Department, and he joins me today. And Alex, thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell us sort of what the next step is? There's been criticisms for what's happening, but where do you see this moving forward to?
Well, Ben, I'd say Happy New Year, but Governor Walz sure dropped the ball early on this. As you guys noted, this is one of the largest frauds in American history and probably the largest theft of public welfare dollars. And one of the programs that's implicated is child care funds that my agency sends out. And this doesn't just impact Minnesota. This impacts all American taxpayers because we send $185 million a year out to Minnesota, and we deserve accountability for the use of those dollars. So, as you noted, we've taken 3 concrete actions to nip this in the bud. First, we have turned off the spigot. We've turned on the Defend the Spend system for child care funds, and we'll make sure reimbursement is based on justifiable expenses. Second, we have asked for a specific audit of the facilities in Minnesota that have been implicated. We've asked for attendance records, inspection records, licensing records, complaint histories, and things like that will help us get to the bottom of this. And then third, on the website we run, childcare.gov, we have put up a hotline for anyone with information on fraud, waste, or abuse for them to be able to submit that to us directly. Since that went live earlier this week, we already have more than 200 tips in queue.
So there are 200 new tips, complaints, accusations or allegations of fraud. Again, you can look at the crypto Ponzi scheme. This is just in 2022. Okay, the crypto Ponzi scheme, Sam Bankman-Fried was the Democratic donor's second largest donor, the Democratic Party's second largest donor. So the FTX collapse or scandal, this was in 2022. Jeffrey Epps was a Democratic donor. Sam Bankman-Fried, Harvey Weinstein, you can look at Hollywood. And Tim Walz now is basically, Tim Walz, Ilhan Omar, potentially a part of a major fraud scheme. But where are Democrats getting all this money from? Well, there was a crypto Ponzi scheme in 2022. Then you have billions of dollars in federal funds meant for, families, vulnerable people, poor people, that Democrats have been taking. Whether it's Medicare fraud or the fraud that's taking place in Minnesota. There's billions of dollars. Then you had Doge, which is exactly why there was a concerted effort to go after Tesla dealerships. But you look at the money. Who is giving money? Who in their right mind is giving money to the Democratic Party? Not President Trump wants 77 million Americans. And he wants to bring back manufacturing jobs. He's doing so with tariffs. He's enforcing immigration laws through ICE. But what do Democrats stand for? They're not going to defund ICE. They're just trying to intimidate the law enforcement officials that work for ICE. The point is, how are they getting all this money? How is the Democratic Party staying afloat financially? Where do they get this money from? Well, there was a Ponzi scheme in 2022. Now you have another $8 billion scandal. The FTX was something like, how many billions of dollars was that? The crypto Ponzi scheme? How many billions? Really quickly. The Ponzi scheme in 2022 was $8 billion. Okay, he was sentenced to 25 years, Sam Bankman-Fried. There's $8 billion. There's potentially $8 to $9 billion in Minnesota of fraud. You have 16 or so billion dollars in less than, 5 years or so, linked to the Democratic Party. We're not even getting to Clinton's servers and, Biden's laptop and everything else, and Jeffrey Epps and all that stuff. Where are they getting all this money? Who's giving money to the Democratic Party? Who in their right mind is giving money on their own? Except, like, in 2016, Bernie Sanders supporters. And I was the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post in 2016. And the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post, in 2015, 2016. I mean, his money was used to buy a Steele dossier. But the point is, money is being funneled to the Democratic Party through these shady, fraudulent, corrupt criminal means or ventures or avenues. It's so bizarre. And it's like, this is the reason that the far left doesn't get Medicare for all or single payer. One of the reasons, in addition to it's not feasible. But if it were feasible, you have such rampant corruption, it's unbelievable. And Democrats don't want to get to the bottom of it because of tribalism or it's their team. Who knows why they don't want to get to the bottom of it?
We've also heard some criticisms, I've got to say. While stopping fraud is one thing, here's something that the Minnesota.
By the way, Paul Bartlett, thank you so very much. As always, Paul, thank you. In Australia, thank you so much, my friend. Greatly appreciated. To my super chat, thank you.
Minnesota teachers and lawmakers said they were sounding alarm over it. Listen to this.
Fraud prevention is about policy and not politics. It's about solutions.
Fraud prevention is not about policy. It's about law enforcement. It's not about policy. The policies are the reason that the fraud exists. The Democratic Party policies are the exact reason that these billions of dollars have been funneled to organizations that potentially directly harm national security. And so, anyway, let's continue.
And not spectacle. But everything that we've seen from the federal government this week is about politics.
If we allow this funding freeze to happen, all Minnesotans are going to suffer. We cannot succumb to hate and fear-mongering.
So I agree. Like I always say there during these segments, God bless the Somali community. You have veterans, business owners, you have people who vote Republican, you have people who vote for Trump, and God bless the people who vote Democrat, and God bless the Ilhan Omar voters. And you know what? You cannot paint the Somali community with one brush. You can't paint any community. This is a beautiful, vibrant, wonderful community full of beautiful, amazing people. There is a Democratic Party scandal that I love President Trump, but he cannot give Democrats an easy layup and out to circumvent this kind of like, oh, it's bigotry. Oh, this is Democratic Party corruption, Tammany Hall style corruption in every major blue city in every blue state. This happens in Chicago. It happens in other places as well. And the Somali community lives in Minnesota, but there's not a widespread community in Chicago or in other major cities where this is taking place. It's a Democratic Party scandal. And if there's a federal freeze on assistance, that's because of potentially $8 billion funneled, while WALZ and all the other Democrats that run Minnesota allowed it to take place. The question now is, are they complicit in the felonies and the fraud and the criminality?
So I suppose essentially, how do you find the balance between stopping the fraud but also not taking away from people who are not committing it?
Yeah, so the child care program is an absolutely critical program, which is why it's important that we get it right and we get it to the right individuals. Every dollar stolen by fraudsters is a dollar that is not going to a child who's not getting access to early learning. It's a dollar stolen from families who aren't able to get workforce supports that are necessary. So we had to step in, as the largest fraud scandal in American history is unfolding under Governor WALZ. He's tweeting about Catterday and taking other weird actions. So we had to take actions that we will strike a balance. This is an important program, as I said, and it's important for legitimate dollars to get out. And it is important for taxpayers to have accountability for those dollars.
It's interesting. If you look back in 2012, there was an audit which found, I think, $16 million of fraud in 2012. Yet nothing was done after that. I mean, why did nothing happen? Why has this gone on so long?
Well, let me tell you some of the actions that have been taken so far this year. In May of this year, HHS's Office of the Inspector General issued a report that was critical of Minnesota's practices, specifically with attendance records, and it did note overpayments. When I was sworn in shortly thereafter in December, we sent a letter to Governor WALZ asking for specific information on the child care program as well as other public welfare programs, and requested a response by December 26th. Unfortunately, we hit a brick walls and we did not get a response other than a delay on that letter, which is why we had to take more aggressive action.
I want to read a post to you that President Trump put up. It said this. It said, "There is more fraud in California than there is in Minnesota, if that is even possible. When you add in election fraud, then they are tied for first. 2 crooked governors, 2 crooked states." And I suppose the question is, where does this go next? I mean, there must be presumably countless places that haven't been looked into where fraud must be taking place.
As I noted, we put up a hotline for anyone to submit tips on fraud, waste, or abuse nationwide, and we've received over 200 responses to date. We're going to take a pretty careful look at those. We're going to partner with other components within HHS to make sure we've got an appropriate response to those. And we set up the Defend the Spend system to be nationwide so that we are only sending out checks for legitimate expenses.
Right. Well, Alex Adams, thank you so much for joining us today and for explaining that to us. Happy New Year, and thank you.
Thank you.
So there are new allegations of fraud every single day. That's very important when you talk about this scandal.
Major fallout now over the Minnesota fraud scandal that keeps on growing. Nearly 100 mayors are voicing concerns about the state's fiscal policies, writing to the governor there, Tim Walz. Fraud, unchecked spending, and inconsistent fiscal management in St. Paul have trickled down to our cities. Our state owes it to our citizens to practice responsible fiscal management and to stop taxing our families, seniors, and businesses out of Minnesota. And now the federal government is getting involved here. House Oversight Committee, it's widening its probe, inviting state lawmakers to come testify and other federal departments to investigate. So let's bring in now Chairman James Coper. He leads the charge over at Oversight, and he joins us now. Good morning to you. Tell us about who you're bringing in, who you want to see on Capitol Hill, and what questions do you want to ask them?
Well, the most important people are the state whistleblowers, the state employees who put that tweet out that we all are familiar with a few weeks ago that alerted America to the massive fraud. These state employees also allege that they had warned both Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison for years that this fraud was occurring, and yet nothing was taking place. So we're going to bring the state employees in. We're going to get their sworn testimony. We appreciate their bravery in coming forward. We're also going to bring in state lawmakers and Minnesota mayors because the walls are caving in on Tim Walz. this massive amount of fraud is affecting and impacting every citizen of Minnesota because they're having to cut services because so much of the money for social programs was wasted and defrauded by this Somali population. So these are the people we're going to bring in. We're going to try to identify who was responsible for this. We're going to try to identify banks that we can subpoena their bank records so we can follow the money to see how much was taken, who took it, and then who do we need to hold accountable, and hopefully we'll have some criminal referrals at the end of the investigation.
What is so fascinating about this, Chairman Comer, is how no one knew, or did they know? This is an op-ed from the Wall Street Journal here, asking, I think, a pretty fair question. When nearly $250 million can vanish from one state program before anyone truly notices, taxpayers are justified in asking who was supposed to be minding the store. The uncomfortable answer is that no one elected by the people held that responsibility or held the mandate and clout to stop the scheme. You know, your whip, Tom Emmer, says there's no way that Governor Tim Walz didn't know, or somebody in his administration didn't have an inkling that there was something going on. Do you agree with that? And how do you prove that?
I agree completely. Look, Tom Emmer was a state legislator in Minnesota before he came here. He has the pulse of Minnesota. He communicates regularly with Minnesota state legislators and Minnesota state employees. They've been talking about this for years. There was a congressman that came in from Minnesota when I came in 9 years ago to Congress named Jason Lewis. He was talking about the massive fraud from the Somali population 9 years ago. So this is something that's been talked about in Minnesota for a long time. The Minnesota media is very liberal, so they're never going to write anything bad about a beloved Democrat like Tim Walz or Keith Ellison. So finally, the state employees have stepped forward publicly and talked about this massive amount of fraud. And I can tell you from our preliminary discussions with these state employees, it is a significant amount of money. And remember, Minnesota isn't a big state. So when you're talking about billions of dollars for a small state, that is a significant percentage of the budget for welfare in that state.
Should the governor resign? Are you calling on him to resign?
Well, not yet. He deserves due process, and we're going to give him due process. One of the things he said in the last...
They're compiling evidence now of potential criminality. You cannot have fraud in the scale that took place without potentially the governor involved. This is not, an anomaly in U.S. history. You've had governors, you've had state representatives, you've had Congress people go to prison for fraud, for, felonies. This is it's happened before. So, and Democrats, by the way, picked him for, can you imagine this man as vice president? Could you imagine a heartbeat away from the presidency? God forbid. Could you imagine President Tim Walz? I mean, God forbid.
48 hours was that the Oversight Committee didn't need to worry about this investigation, that he would take care of it. I mean, no one in America believes that. That is a joke. We are going to investigate this. The key to a good congressional investigation is having whistleblowers. And fortunately for us, we have some state employees who have bravely stepped forward. We're going to get them under oath, and they're going to tell us everything they know, and we're going to go from there. Wherever the investigation leads us, we will go. We're going to try to do it as rapidly as possible. But I think at the end of the day, the American taxpayers, and especially the taxpayers in Minnesota, are going to be sick at their stomach, and Tim Walz is going to have a lot of explaining to do.
Okay. Chairman Comer, thanks for joining us on this holiday week. We hope you have a very safe and Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
So Nick Shirley is a fantastic journalist. Again, whether this is not a Somali scandal, it is a Democratic Party scandal. Like I always say, God bless the Somali community. God bless Nick Shirley. And you can have both sentiments at once, and I think people should have both sentiments at once.
Outrage over allegations of widespread fraud of taxpayer dollars in the state of Minnesota. A viral video appears to expose that alleged fraud at several Somali-operated child care centers in Minneapolis. And the independent journalist who published that video, which now has over 100 million views, tells Fox News the scam is extensive.
I've known about the fraud taking place for a long time. Minnesotans have been telling me for a long time about the Somali fraud that is taking place. And that's just the tip. When people say it's the tip of the iceberg, it really is, because there's billions of fraud inside the state of Minnesota right now.
And Garrett Tenney is covering this story from our Midwest Bureau. Garrett, good morning to you.
Yeah, Bill, good morning. This is just the latest example of the kind of widespread fraud that whistleblowers say has been taking place in Minnesota for years. And elected officials from towns around the state all the way to Capitol Hill are demanding investigations now into child care centers like this one. Quality Learning Center in Minneapolis. You can see this child care center that has received
I look forward to you.
In federal tax money over the past 6 years can't even spell learning right on its sign. And since May 22, this business has been investigated at least 13 times for more than 50 different violations by the Department of Human Services in Minnesota. The business is licensed for 99 kids, but when independent reporter Nick Shirley went by this month, the place appeared completely empty.
There's no one here right now. It's midday on a weekday. And if you were to try to go inside, it's completely closed. There's no windows, no nothing. And like I said, they literally spelt the word wrong on their sign. This is open and blatant fraud taking place here inside of Minnesota.
Shirley went to multiple child care centers and said he found similar setups where business.
Democrats should love Nick Shirley. Progressives should love Nick Shirley because the fraud that he's finding, that he's uncovering, could be used for single payer, for the Green New Deal. They want all of these policies without addressing the rampant criminality in blue states. And again, like I said, God bless the Somali community. It's not about it does nobody any good to label it that for like a Somali, issue. It doesn't. It's a Democratic Party issue, and it happens in every blue state and in every major blue city. Tammany Hall, long before recent immigrants came to the country, it's 120 years ago. The same things take place. You can go ahead and read about Boss Tweed. Read about it's a pamphlet book called The Plunkett of Tammany Hall. It's the template that was created 120 years ago. These are political machines that run, major cities in blue states, and they get federal funds, and it is funneled and laundered, and it happens in every major city, Chicago as well, not just Minneapolis, and other cities also, blue states, blue cities.
Businesses that have received piles of taxpayer dollars were either closed or he couldn't see any children present. In response to that video that's now gone viral, Vice President J.D. Vance posted on X, "What's happening in Minnesota is a microcosm of the immigration fraud in our system. Politicians like it because they get power. Welfare cheats like it because they get rich. But it's a zero-sum game, and they are stealing both money and political power from Minnesotans." Senator Ron Johnson says this is now going to be a primary focus for congressional investigators.
These agency heads who funnel the federal money to the state agencies, they have to demand that the state agencies are transparent. And unfortunately, particularly in Democrat-controlled states, they're not. They're refusing to turn over those records. I've got subpoena power. I will use that subpoena power to obtain these records because we have to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is under fire for all of this happening under his watch, but he says he's now taking steps to investigate this fraud further. He claims it's something they've already been looking into and that they are now setting up guardrails to keep it from happening again. Bill?
And Nick Shirley's video at 110 million views as of this morning. Viral is an understatement there. Safe to say plenty of public interest in this. Garrett Tenney live in Chicago for us this morning. Garrett, thank you. Molly?
Thank you, Bill. Minnesota Republican Congressman Tom Emmer is the House Majority Whip and here to comment on all of this. An incredible story here breaking. As Bill noted, this has gone viral. Nick Shirley's reporting. He got out there and he did, the old-fashioned legwork. He walked the walk, he asked questions, and he revealed some fascinating stuff. And as many people have said, potentially the tip of the iceberg here. I want to get your thoughts on his reporting and what's been exposed here.
Why wouldn't publications in Minnesota do exactly what Nick Shirley did? Well, modern day journalists most of whom are liberal-leaning or vote Democrat, their mentality, the paradigm is, well, if it hurts the Democratic Party, it helps Trump. So therefore, the greater evil is Trump. $8 billion or $1 billion in fraud or anything that harms the Democratic Party, has to be swept under the rug and ignored because it might help Trump. And he was, he's the end of the world, and he's an authoritarian, and he wants to devour democracy. And so that mentality started in 2014, 2015, really. In 2015, it was openly stated among journalists on the left, well, you're going to help Trump. Why are you talking about Clinton cheating Bernie Sanders? You're only going to help Trump. Yeah. Unfortunately, the rampant corruption within the Democratic Party that is infinitely worse than what's taking place in anything to do with the Republican Party actually helps President Trump. That's true. It wasn't even a Russian plot, by the way. That was all fabricated. So you have endless scandals, but media is still influential among people who still trust media. And so if you're a Democratic voter and you still watch CNN, MSDNC, or MS Now, or whatever it's called, and they're consistently bolstering your viewpoint, they're consistently bolstering your viewpoint, and they're consistently stating the things you want to hear, then you don't want to learn about fraud. And even if fraud takes place, whether it's the crypto Ponzi scheme, the second largest donor for Democrats, it was like an $8 billion crypto Ponzi scheme, the worst Ponzi scheme in the history of the world, I think, in terms of dollar amount, more than Bernie Madoff. Or this, you don't want to hear about it because it helps Trump. And even they still haven't realized that rampant corruption, fraud, criminality within the Democratic Party, yes, does help President Trump, because you don't find that with President Trump. They literally have to make things up to try to level the playing field.
Here.
Well, great to be with you, Molly. I mean, look, this young journalist, Nick Shirley, goes out there and finds more evidence of fraud in one day than Tim Walz and our Attorney General Keith Ellison have found in 7 years. Why did he find it? Because he looked for it, Molly. While Tim Walz and Keith Ellison have been looking the other way, billions of dollars have been stolen from Minnesota taxpayers. You've got the child care centers that he showed you. There's 80 autism centers that are under investigation. There was a housing stabilization program that was created in 2020. They estimated it was going to run about $2 million a year. Molly, they shut it down in October because it was rife with fraud, and they'd already sucked out over $160 million. The U.S. Attorney's Office here in Minnesota estimates this fraud could actually reach $9 billion before the investigation is all over. And we've got two major issues going on in addition to just the fraud. One,
if it reaches $9 billion, and the DOJ doesn't indict the top individuals, that is likely a problem.
Millions of dollars of this fraud has been shipped back to Somalia to a known terrorist group, Al-Shabaab. And two, we've got all kinds of whistleblowers now that are coming forward. And if what they are saying is real and can be documented, and what they're saying is they told Tim Walz about the fraud when it was happening. And he not only ignored them, he retaliated against him. I'm telling you, Molly, if that's accurate.
And that is a crime. Right there. That's an example of potential crime. That is an example of a potential crime if that happened.
And it can be proven. Tim Walz needs to be held accountable. Everybody in his administration needs to be held accountable. This guy now is scrambling to make it look like he's doing something. 2 weeks ago, he created a position with a guy to investigate fraud. 7 years too late, Timmy. It's time that we find answers to all these questions and hold everybody accountable that has ripped off Minnesota taxpayers and, frankly, supported terrorists in a foreign country.
A lot of interesting points there. The House Oversight Committee as well looking into this and asking a lot of questions about what's going on in Minnesota. I want to get a little look ahead, so at 2026, some of the difficult challenges that Congress is facing, particularly when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and the expiring subsidies. I want to get your take on this. This is Representative Swalwell, Congressman on the Democratic side, of course, and get your reaction. Take a listen.
The majority of the House Representatives wants to put these subsidies in place so that Americans can pay less for health care. So it's now on the Speaker, when we reconvene in just a couple days, whether he will put this up for a vote.
Yeah, now there are millions of people that supposedly depend on these subsidies. Your thoughts on where this is heading and what Republicans will be doing?
Well, these comments are indicative. They're what the Democrats are trying to do. It's very disingenuous, Molly. These are enhanced premium tax credits. Let's make it clear to your viewers that these are paid directly to health insurance companies, not to the people that need the health insurance, which is the other thing that's important here. These enhanced premium tax credits were.
Yeah, but you do need the subsidies because the ACA was not affordable. Am I wrong? In the chat, let me know. You need the subsidies. The ACA made things more expensive, more costly. It was supposed to lower costs. It didn't lower costs. It did not lower costs. Things were better in a way without the Affordable Care Act because it's not affordable. The premiums have gone up every year, and the ACA has made everyone else's premiums go up. I mean, if I'm wrong, let me know in the chat. But see, that's the thing. It's Trump Republicans, which I am a Trump Republican, or I'm not a registered Republican. I'm not a registered anything. I'm an independent. Well, I was a lifelong Democrat, and I tried to become an independent. We'll see. We'll see. It's very difficult. It's like the mafia. It's like impossible to leave the Democratic Party. But I did try to register to actually leave the Democratic Party and register as an independent. But anyway, the point is, I vote for President Trump, love President Trump, but the one thing the Trump Republicans need to do is develop a concise alternative, a thorough and concise and legitimate alternative to the ACA.
Were created by Democrats during the pandemic under unusual circumstances to expire on December 31st of this year. They only impact 21 million people in this country, while 300 million people are seeing their health insurance premiums run out of control to the extent that they can't afford it. These guys are talking about 21 million people. Eric Swalwell and Democrats do not want to fix this problem. They want it as a political issue. I applaud Donald Trump, who is going after the problem. He is going after drug prices, and now he's calling health insurance executives in front of him to talk about why it is over the last 15 years when Democrats and their co-conspirators, the health insurance industry, created the Unaffordable Care Act. Why is it over the last 15 years that health insurers have been making billions of dollars while Americans have less and less access to the great health care that this country has to offer? That's the real problem, and Donald Trump and Republicans are addressing it.
Health insurance premiums have gone up exponentially. It's absolute insanity. It's absolute insanity. And the ACA was supposed to lower costs. So what happened? Can't blame Trump. He's only been around for the past year. We had 4 years of Biden. And costs went up exponentially. So anyway, let's continue.
Minnesota, their Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan, well, she's busy making a giant fool of herself, wearing a hijab to stand in solidarity.
And my investigation, I've known about the fraud taking.
investigating did you actually have to do to find these centers, some of them that have misspelled signs? Did you just find them easily, or how did you go about this? Because it's amazing to me that nobody else besides you saw a problem here when they can't even spell on the side of a learning center, Nick.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I have to give props to the man by the name of David who helped me in this investigation. He's been doing research for years trying to expose this fraud. And nobody has given him the time of day to even talk about this. So with his help and my own investigation, I've known about the fraud taking place for a long time. Minnesotans have been telling me for a long time about the Somali fraud that is taking place. And with his help, we were able to crack over $110 million in fraud in one day. And that's just the tip. When people say it's the tip of the iceberg, it really is, because there's billions of fraud inside the state of Minnesota right now.
Nick, kind of on that.
Nick Shirley is a true journalist, a hero, and I say this
topic
with only love and respect for the Somali community. You can say you can respect and show love for the Somali community, and also love and respect and admiration for Nick Shirley. Actually, I think most people should have those two sentiments at once. And where are the Nick Shirleys on the liberal or leftist or progressive side? The only progressive people that do this, the quote unquote investigative journalists, are people who videotape they're at protests. That's it. Where is the rampant fraud in red states? Then where is it? I love Trump, but I would love to know also. I would do videos on it. I would write about it. Where's the billions in fraud that Trump and Trump Republicans are funneling to organizations around the world and in this country, non-governmental organizations? Where is it? Where is the left-wing version or the Democratic Party version of Nick Shirley? I would applaud that person. All you have is, 1 to 2 million, 3 million, 4 million sub-channels pontificating, preaching, condemning, lecturing, giving the sermons on morality. And where's the investigative journalism? It's non-existent. They can't find any fraud within among red states or Trump Republicans. They can't. Because the modern day Republican Party, not that it's perfect, it's not perfect, but it's very different from the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is a machine. It's a machine run by media, public relations, Hollywood. It's a machine. They get money from FTX, and then that guy goes to jail. Then they funnel billions, and then WALZ and others might be indicted. They create hoaxes that Brennan and Comey and others might be indicted on eventually. Clinton eventually will be indicted. Where's the investigative journalists? Where's the equivalent, the left-leaning equivalent of Nick Shirley? It would be wonderful if there was a left-leaning equivalent of Nick Shirley. Go find all the corruption with Trump. Find the corruption with ICE. Where's the corruption? You're upset that ICE is doing its job? Is literally enforcing the law. Then defund it. If you can't find actual rampant corruption, then actually push to defund ICE. Oh, they're not going to do that. What about Medicare for all single payer? Oh, they're not going to do that. There's literally nothing that they say that they care about that they're actually going to implement, because nothing they care about is most of the things that the far left or progressives or Democrats actually like. The things that get them really going, single payer, ICE, they can push for legislation. They choose not to. And we know why. We know why they choose not to. They'd rather have hysteria than actual policies that reflect their alleged value system.
You said that, I believe you just said his name was David, has been researching this for years. In your experience, or in your opinion, just spending the day you spent out there tracking this down, is there any way that this hasn't reached the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz? I mean, take aside ongoing litigation or what have you, but is there any way that he could claim ignorance on this, just in your experience over this investigation?
Oh, it's so obvious. If you're living in Minnesota, you have to raise your eyebrows and think, what's going on? Literally, if you drive around Minnesota, around Minneapolis, you'll see daycare centers, autism centers. You will then see transportation companies that have snow piled up as if they haven't moved in months. And then you also go into buildings where there'll be 20 healthcare companies, 14 and 22, the video that I published on X and YouTube. So it is like a kindergartner could figure out that there's fraud going on.
Nick, one of the most shocking things to me in the video that you posted was the reaction of some of the Somalis that you were interacting with. The one clip where they called the cops on you for simply...
News operation had a guy, a roving reporter, who would go around and find waste, fraud, and abuse. Are there local reporters like that in your area? And why do you think they weren't doing the work that you did?
I don't know. They're scared of being called nowadays. Because it's Somalians that are committing this fraud, people are scared to be called Islamophobic, racist, in which has nothing to do with what's going on, because fraud is fraud. It doesn't matter if it's a black person, white person, Asian person, Mexican. Fraud is fraud. And we work too hard simply just to be paying taxes and enabling fraud to be happening.
I shouldn't even be talking about
Nick, I mean, it's stunning. Congratulations again on your video, by the way. Well deserved. All these people are finding it and finding you and all the good work that you do. But Governor Tim Walz is pushing back on the...
So God bless this young man. This is becoming a huge, huge scandal. 2026 is going to be a very amusing, interesting year politically. And again, my question is, why aren't there Nick Shirleys on the left? And the answer is obvious. The progressives and Democrats are worried about lecturing, pontificating, preaching, giving sermons on morality. And Trump Republicans don't need to funnel billions into non-governmental organizations or these programs and then, skim off the top. They just don't need to. Trump is giving exactly what he promised. Enforcing immigration laws, not sending Americans to never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts. That's what actually gave him 2 victories. That he's an anti-war president, even though he's not a pacifist. And yes, he's engaged in certain militancy that, I'd rather him not do, but he's an American president. But he's not a Bush or Obama, hawk or Clinton. And he's bringing tariffs. He's leveling tariffs, bringing jobs back to the country. That's what, if you could disagree, no, it's not happening. That's what he ran on. That's what he's doing. The difference is that Trump runs on things and then implements those things to the best of his ability. Democrats run on things and then try their best never to implement any of the things they pretend to run on, which they don't ever talk about during election time. And it's rampant fraud and potentially, like the Honorable James Comey says, potentially. Tim Walz is involved. Anyway, hit subscribe. God bless you all. Every day, ladies and gentlemen. It's now hardworking HA back to, if you've been here for a number of years, you remember when I used to do 1 million videos a day. It's back to that person that you once remembered. So I'll be back doing 3 live streams on this channel. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel. We'll have a segment on there right now. Hit subscribe to this channel and go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. God bless you all. See you tomorrow morning. I'd say maybe like around in about 12